Shalom, and welcome to the Understanding the Kingdoms Behind the Metal series. And first, I want to give all honor and thanks to the Most High Yah for allowing me to speak and do this series, for just guiding me through it and just help me along the way. Today, we're going to be discussing the brass, belly, and thighs, and the iron legs. So, let's get right into it. All right, let's start off with who is that brass? The answer is Greece. Greece is the stomach and thighs of brass. How do we know? Greece reigned from 331 BC to 168 BC under King Alexander the Great. And let's turn to Daniel chapter 22, 2 verse 39. All right, in Daniel chapter 2 verse 39, at the ending part, it reads, "In another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth." Now, I do want to touch on one thing, and we touched on this in part 1, so definitely highly recommend you watching part 1 and part 2 so you'll be caught up to what's going on. When it uses brass in that scripture, if you look at the blue letter, it reads as bronze, and I believe it's also bronze because during this time period, I believe you need zinc and copper to make brass, and zinc was hard to come by. If it wasn't zinc, if it was another metal, I remember from doing research, it said it was hard to come by. So during this time, most places, most countries and nations were using bronze. So it's most likely bronze when it's talking about the kingdom of, and then, bronze. So, how do we know this? Well, most armor and weapons were made of bronze. And second, most statues were made of bronze. And as you can see right here, and there's a lot of paintings of this during the Grecian time. Most of their soldiers were covered in bronze. Some iron, some brass here and there, but mostly bronze. All right, let's get into it. Most armor and weapons were made of bronze. And let's talk about each component of that armor. A hoplite was the most common type of heavily armed foot soldier in ancient Greece. So this would have been the soldier with the best armor. So keep that in mind. The helmet. Protection was provided by a leather-lined bronze helmet, which could vary in design. It being similar to the helmet right here and right here. The upper body armor. A corselet or breastplate of bronze or leather. So the armor right here, bronze breastplate. The limbs. Bronze greaves to protect the shins, and sometimes arm guards were worn. So you see right here, this would have been the greaves. The shield. Now it says helmet right there, but I meant to put shield. The hoplite carried a large secular shield, some 80 centimeters, 30 inches, in diameter, and weighing as much as 8 kilograms. This was made of wood or stiff leather, faced with bronze, and was held with the left arm placed through a central band and gripped via a strap attached to the shield rim. So this would have been that bronze face of the shield, and the wood and leather would have been around here and in the back of here. But yes, most of their shields were made of bronze. And weapons. The principal weapons of a hoplite infantryman wore a long ash wood spear and was fitted with a bronze or iron blade and a four-sided inspike. They also carried a sword fitted with an iron blade. So with the swords and blades, you're definitely going to see a lot of iron being used. Mainly with the sword blades and short blades, iron was the main one being used. But that's why during this period they didn't have a lot of swords, because iron was very, very hard to come by. So most of their blades on their spears would have been mostly of bronze, but they did use some iron as well. So looking at all this, it kind of shows you how Greece is that bronze belly and thighs. And we see this because most of their armor and their weapons were made of bronze. But the next point is going to hit it home, and it's going to show you how big bronze was to their society. All right, let's move on to the next point. Most statues were made of bronze. The conquest of Alexander the Great, ruled 336 BC to 323 BC, ushered in the Hellenistic period, characterized by the spread of Greek art, literature, and language throughout his empire and in his lands beyond its borders. Bronze statues were produced in the thousands throughout the Hellenistic world. Honorific portraits of rulers and citizens populated cities, and images of deities, heroes, and victorious athletes crowded sanctuaries. So, look at some of these pictures right here. I believe this is Zeus, that they were big into building these bronze statues. They produced them in the thousands. And actually, if you go over there today, you'll see a lot of them just standing still today. Just a lot of these statues were made, and mostly all of them were bronze. It's very rare that you'll see any other metal used. And this is a second point that really just hits home in showing you how Greece was that bronze belly and thighs. It talks about the kingdom of bronze. This is that kingdom. I mean, it being used in warfare with the armor and the weapons, and in the culture with the statues. And they also use some of it in their architecture. So now that we know what is the bronze belly and thighs, let's move on to who are the iron legs. All right, who is the iron? Answer is Rome. Rome is the legs of iron. How do we know? Rome ruled from 168 BC to 476 AD under the Caesars. And let's turn to Daniel chapter 2, verse 40. And it reads, "And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron. For as much as iron breaketh into pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise." So we see from this scripture alone, without even going into the further evidence that we have, that it was most likely Rome, especially when you're talking about right after Greece. That was the strongest nation right after. So it's just the scripture alone kind of gives us our evidence. But let's go into the two evidence that we have to further support it being Rome. Most weapons and armor were made from iron. So, similar to how Greece weapons and armor were made of bronze, most of Rome's armor and weapons were made of iron. And the second point, it is one, if not the most strongest military in history. So, Rome's military, we all know how strong it is. Whenever you're talking about having a strong military, you usually kind of compare yourself to Rome. That's how strong they were. They were going to be talked about for many, many centuries, many decades. They were a very, very strong military. And I believe they was the strongest military for its time throughout history. And as you see right here, we have some of what we believe the city looked like, and what I believe is Julius Caesar right here. All right. Most weapons and armor were made from iron, similar to how we did with Greece. We're gonna go through the armor used and how that armor was made. So, and this is speaking about the legion infantrymen. So this armor right here is going to be what they would have worn. Some differ here and there, but this is also one of their mid to high soldiers. It was the soldier they mostly used, and the ones that you hear talked about when it's talked about a legion, it'd be a legion of these guys right here. And this is the armor that they use. All right, first the helmet. The Quillus helmet was a type of ancient Celtic and Roman helmet popular in the 1st century BCE. It was typically made in bronze or brass. So the helmet definitely would have been bronze and brass, similar to Greece. They didn't really use iron helmets because your head can only support so much. So mostly everyone's helmet, all the nations, used brass or bronze. The body armor. One of the body armors used was chainmail. A single ring mail body would consist of 50,000 rings of steel. So it would have looked like this. This is chainmail right here. Whole bunch of rings just looped around each other, making this iron chainmail. And plate body armor. This was used throughout the legions of the early Roman Empire. Made from iron, each of the plates would be attached to a leather undergarment. So this is the armor that they're talking about. You see these iron plates overlapping each other right here, tied together with leather. All right, the shield. Roman shields were made by gluing several layers of wood together and had an iron rim. So this would have been the shield right here. And this would have been the iron rim. And weapons. The gladius sword. The blacksmith would use several hard steels for the outer layers of the sword, with softer steels for the center. So, right here, the gladius sword. And then the spear. The Roman spear was a wooden shaft, either ash or hazel, attached to an iron head. So, right here. And similar to Greece, we see that when you look at most of their armor and weapons, you see a lot of iron. Iron was becoming more discovered during this time. They was able to get to iron and get it out the ground more efficiently during this time. So you see the rise of iron. And this was during the Roman reign. This is why they use mostly iron. It's stronger than brass and bronze. It's more harder. It just makes sense to use it for your military. And this further proves it being the iron legs. Not only for the second point we're about to get into in the strength of the Roman Empire, but this is the one of the things that made it strong was its military and the armor that it's used. Because a lot of people during this time, a lot of the nations were still using bronze and brass, and they couldn't stand toe to toe with Rome because they used iron. All right, the second point. It is one of, if not the most strongest military in history. Let's look at the army. The military of ancient Rome was one of the largest pre-modern professional standing armies that ever existed, and the Roman legion was the most powerful war machine in the ancient world. The Roman army, arguably one of the longest surviving and most effective fighting forces in military history. The territories. The Roman Empire was one of the largest in history, with, with continuous territories throughout Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. The Latin phrase imperium, sign fine, empire without end. So that's what it's described as. Rome was described as an empire without end. Expressed the ideology that neither time nor space limited the empire. And we see right here, when you look at the how much it conquered. I mean, this is huge. Like, even taking in like the waters, because they because it surrounded this whole place, it controlled all the waters. Taking in the waters in the land, it there's no empire that's ever existed larger than Rome. And I mean, this is crazy. They're all the way up to what is called Portugal today, all the way going stretching into the Middle East, towards Asia. I mean, it's crazy how much they was able to conquer, and it just go to further illustrate, and it's further evidence, to why they were the iron. We know how strong iron is, and let's get into that. Like iron is to the other metals on Nebuchadnezzar's statue, the Roman Empire was stronger than any other empire that came before it. So the reason why I say that they're the strongest military in history is not because I believe they can beat the US. I mean, obviously, if Rome went against the US, they would lose within probably 2 days. But for its time, there was nobody coming close to Rome. At least, and nowadays, you have people that compete with the US, like Russia and China. But during that time, nobody can touch Rome. Rome actually had to fall within. That's how Rome fell. And there was other things as well, but they they were very, very, very strong. And it just further illustrates and kind of proves them being the iron. And here's a piece of iron right here. I mean, just iron, super, super strong. It says, it breaks all the other metals on Nebuchadnezzar's statue. It's one of the strongest on the periodic table. Not the strongest, but one of the strongest. That's why we use it in infrastructure and anything that needs a solid foundation, needs to be solid. We use iron. I want to thank you all for listening on this part 3 of the series. I also highly recommend that you go back and watch part 1 and part 2. If you like this video, please give a like, subscribe, and share this video. And I hope you are edified by the series. And if you have any questions, any rebuttals to anything, any interest, just put it down in the comments. And as always, I want to give all thanks and honor to the Most High Yah for allowing me to do this. I hope you all have a rock day, a great day, and shalom.